And it's heavy! Oh. I hope you don't too. So, it's fall semester, huh? Who here loves fall? Yeah! So one of the things I really love about fall, it goes from 98 degrees to 81 degrees. Yeah! I know you people in the apartments and some of you in the dorms are like, I am glad I'm going to turn off this fan and put it away. And I can finally wear long pants during the daytime. Another thing I really like about fall, pumpkin spice lattes at Starbucks. Okay. There's one thing that I love more than any of that in the fall. USC football! Come on, keep it going. Yeah, this is my jersey. So it seems like there's some hardcore fans out there, right? Who here is a hardcore fan? Who's here for the Hawaii game? It was at 5 o'clock. Who waited in line at noon to get good seats in the student section? Yeah. Who's really hardcore though? Who's going to make the trip out to Palo Alto this weekend? Who's going to do it? All right. Now I think the most hardcore fans though, they go to the rivalry game. Who's going to the rivalry game against UCLA? See, we're all in really, really good company. See that there's so many hardcore fans here. And I, Tim Lee, am a hardcore Trojan football fan.
Yeah, you are.
Both of my parents went to USC and actually met at an InterVarsity meeting. So look around, you know. Out there. Both of my grandfathers went to USC. Many of my aunts and uncles also went to USC and met their spouses here. I have gone to several USC games ever since I was 3 all the way until last year. And this is my Carson Palmer jersey, who's the first quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy for USC in 2002. And I'll tell you right now, I am a hardcore Trojan football fan who attended school at UCLA.
Woo! Yeah.
I know some of you, that may be the first time that you heard that, but let me tell you that as much as I love USC football, I love Jesus even more.
Amen.
And when my parents and I were going to Jesus in prayer and asking him, where do you want me to go? Jesus said, go to UCLA. And so I did. But that didn't make me any less of a hardcore Trojan. And if you were a UCLA student and you didn't know that, I made sure you knew it, and I made sure you never forgot it. Starting my sophomore year, I wore this jersey every single game day around the campus. That's right. In my room, that same pennant I have there, I had to hang in my room with a big fat Beat UCLA sticker on it. A lot of people wonder, how the heck did you live that year? And I don't know, it must have been the grace of God. I am president of Bruins Who Root for USC Facebook group, and I'm actually not the one who started it, and I'm not the only member. In the UCLA March Madness forum, there's a specific forum topic labeled, Who the F*** is Timothy Lee? And who do you think left this mark on UCLA campus? Just kidding, that was it's bad and wrong, and that probably cost them a lot of money, and I would never think about doing that. But I made sure that you knew and never forgot. Tim Lee is a hardcore USC football fan. But there's just one place where I didn't take my Trojan pride. And that was the UCLA student section at the Rose Bowl. You see, every fall, there would be a massive InterVarsity tailgate party every year. And my jersey came off. It stayed at home. In fact, I wouldn't wear a single hint of red. That's sad Panda Tim right there. And do you know why? It's because they have an insane, rabid, hostile crowd. In fact, go to the next clip. All it takes is one person, and then it begins. It goes, take off that red shirt, take off that red shirt. And then before you knew it, there's another person, and then another person, and then there's 450 screaming students at you saying, take off that red shirt, take off that red shirt. And every single football game I've gone to, red shirt comes right off. Show the clip. People came into pressure. Those guys didn't, which good job for them, but unfortunately I think that was the only game that we lost this decade against UCLA. But the thing is, I think for all of us, there are times when we know who we are, what we love, and what we're about, but when the opposition comes up, the red shirt just comes right off. And tonight, I'm going to continue the series on identity. Who am I in the face of opposition? And I think the Bible has a lot to offer us in this area. We're going to look at a story about one righteous man whose name is Elijah, who decides to face off against the king and his 450 men. And here's a little bit of context regarding that. Ahab is the current king of Israel. And last week we heard from Pastor Kevin talk about David. He was a righteous man on the inside, and being the king of Israel, he was able to be a game changer for the better of the nation. There's victory, there's prosperity, but most importantly, there's righteousness throughout the land. And now Ahab is a game changer as well, but definitely for the worse. From the way that he was disobeying God, the nation of Israel had been suffering from a 3-year drought. So let's take a look at the story. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me at Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So if we take a look at Ahab, right off the bat he thinks that he's in the right. He's saying that's Elijah the one who's causing trouble for Israel, because Elijah's the one who said the word and now there's this drought. However, Elijah points out that it's actually Ahab who's responsible. It is Ahab who has abandoned the Lord's commands and followed the Baals. Elijah is simply the messenger. You see, the people of Israel have been following God for hundreds of years. The core and identity of the entire nation was around God. And of all the people, the king should be the one who's the leader of that. I couldn't even imagine if it was Matt Barkley doing at the rivalry game and then takes off his shirt and then puts on a UCLA jersey. That is how crazy, how disgusting it would be for a king to just shed his allegiance from God and turn to something else. Throughout their history, the people of Israel and their kings have wavered in their loyalty to God. But the Bible puts specific focus on Ahab. In fact, in chapter 16, it describes Ahab as doing more evil, doing more to provoke God to anger than any of those kings before him. And what he does specifically is this. He marries a woman by the name of Jezebel, and under her influence, he abandons the Lord and follows her foreign gods, the Baals. And oftentimes, these marriages were used for political gains and alliances. And if we even go back further, even his father's family wasn't following God out all that well. But what Elijah has made clear is that you, Ahab, you have abandoned the Lord. And with all these external pressures, his wife Jezebel, the politics and alliances, the family, Ahab caves in and abandoned any loyalty that he'd have to God and everything he should be standing for as king. And his jersey comes right off. And I need to ask us, have we ever felt like that? Have we ever felt the external pressure that would just be so much easier to take this jersey off? In what settings do we face this external pressure, this opposition, and we feel like the jersey comes off? And see, right now, we all get super hyped for USC football. We get super hyped for praising God. You know, we could do that at Encounter, or do it in church, or we do it in small group. We sing, if our God is for us, then who could be against us? But then when we walk outside, we see that the people against us are our family. We see them as our friends. We see it as our floor mates, as our professors. We see it at the parties we go to. That's so easy for the jersey to come off, and no one is even the wiser. And even though we're feeling that opposition, the pressure that's coming from all different sides, it is ultimately us who decides to take off that jersey, hoping that we just pass for someone. Now, I told you my sophomore year about the jersey and the banner and everything that was going on. Let me tell you about another story where I wasn't quite as bold. That year, I was on an InterVarsity community floor, and I was super pumped up to see people discover Jesus for the first time. And that was all fine and dandy when it was in small group. But when it got to the floor, I just wanted to be nice guy Tim. At our first floor meeting, one of my friends, who's an upperclassman, she decides to stand up and say, "Hey, is anyone interested in finding out more about God? Come to our room on a weekly basis to come to a God investigation group, a gig, and find out who Jesus is for yourself." And I just cowered in my seat. I was like, I don't know this person. I have nothing to do with them. And even though I said nothing, it was kind of like I hid myself in the shirt and then like became Tim the Turtle instead of even Tim the nice guy. I wasn't even the nice guy, or Tim the believer of God. Is Tim the Turtle, who's just standing there while everyone else is doing everything. But I want to ask you, where is it that you could feel the pressure? Where it's easy for the jersey to come off? Where it's easy to just pass by? I'm just another student. I'm just a nice person. I'm just that fun guy. I just want to fit in. But for Elijah, the jersey stays on, and I think there's something that we can learn from him. Going on to verse 20, it says, "So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, 'How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him.' But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, 'I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let them choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces, and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull, and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you will call in the name of your God, and I will call in the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God.' Then all the people said, 'What you say is good.'" Now in complete contrast to King Ahab, who just kind of ditches God and goes in this other direction of the Baals, here's Elijah, who is remaining true to God and the only one left of God's prophets. With this new religious and political climate, Queen Jezebel has given orders to kill off all the prophets of God. And the 100 survivors who are left, well, they're hiding in caves, safely. We see that despite the pressure and despite the opposition, Elijah is not hiding. He's not taking off his jersey, but he's remaining true to God. And so the stage is set. King Ahab and his 450 prophets who follow Baal against Elijah. who follows God. And all this taking place in front of the people of Israel. Basically, each gets a bowl, each gets some wood, but fire has to be provided from the God that they call to. And it might seem a bit random. It's like, fire coming out of nowhere? We're in a drought right now. Why don't you pray for some rain to happen? And that would probably be a really good thing. But if both of them are praying to God, their gods, and then rain comes down, who gets the credit for it? See, right here, fire is very strategic. Also, in this culture, fire is very representative. First, fire represents the presence of God. If we look further back into the history of the Israelites, there's a burning bush where the voice of God is coming out of it. And also when Moses is leading people out of Egypt, there is a pillar of fire that shows the Lord's presence with them. And also, number 2, Baal was considered the Lord of fire. And so basically what Elijah is saying is like, I'm giving you guys home court advantage. Are you up for the challenge? I believe that my God can beat your God at his own game. And all here are the people who are just like, I don't know what's going on here. Elijah says, how long will you waver between two opinions? He draws a line in the sand and tells them, you can't straddle the fence on this. Either choose God and follow him, or choose Baal and follow him. But what happens? It's just crickets. So Elijah puts it on the table. Let's put both to the test, and then you can choose for yourself. And the people say, sounds good. Fair enough. They give Elijah a chance to show them a God who will answer. And I think for some of us who might have grown up in the church for a long time or might be checking out God for the first time, it's like if I drew a line right here and I said, choose God or choose something else, you're like, I honestly don't know where I'd go. But I think there's something that we can learn from these people, and it's to give God a chance. So let's see what happens when they give God a chance. And first up to bat are the prophets of Baal. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Oh, Baal, answer us," they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened." So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. These prophets of Baal are putting a lot of effort to get something back from their God. They probably go on a full 12, 16, 18 hours from morning until evening. And they do everything possible to demonstrate their loyalty and trust to their God. But what happens? No one answers. And Elijah knows nothing is going to happen. And he adds some sass to it. You know, some other versions of the Bible even have the word busy translated as relieving himself. Your God is going to the bathroom. And, just there's no reception up there. And their view of God is so much like a human. Oh, maybe he's deep in thought. Maybe he's traveling. He left for the weekend already. That's why you can't get a hold of him. Maybe he's asleep, so you need to shout louder. And the funny thing is, they believe that their God is like that. And so that's what they do. They shout louder. They start cutting themselves and raving even more, hoping that their fervor and sacrifice will be enough to get their God's attention. But no matter how much commotion they make, their God will not respond. No voice, no one answered, no one paid attention. Their God, Baal, fails to come through no matter how much effort they put into it. And now it's Elijah's turn. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." And all the people came near to him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Israel shall be your name." And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 seahs of sea. And he put the wood in order, and cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. And he said, "Fill 4 jars with water, and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood." And he said, "Do it a second time." And they did it a second time. And he said, "Do it a third time." And they did it a third time. And the water ran around the altar, and filled the trenches also with water. And at the time of the offering of the oblation, Elijah the prophet came near and said, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and have turned their hearts back." Now, in contrast to all the raving and chanting of the prophets of Baal, what Elijah does is extremely simple. He builds an altar with 12 stones to represent the tribes of Israel, the people of God. He digs a trench around it, and 3 times he commands the servants to pour water onto this, just to remove any doubt that this fire can be set without God. There's no spark going by. It's not like he's hiding a fire inside. It's like, no, if this is set on fire, you will know that God did it. And in courage, he comes with one simple prayer. And what do we see that his prayer is focused on? Next slide. Oh. See the bowl? Yeah. What's most important, what is the focus here, is who God is. O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, be known. You are the God in Israel. Know that you, God, O Lord, are God, that the people may know that you, O Lord, are God. In the face of opposition, the focus of Elijah is not himself, but who God is, and that he would be made known. And from what it says, you are the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. You are the God of our history. You are the God in Israel, that you are the God of this nation. Even though our king is going away from you, and even though the people do not know who you are still God here, and that you would be known. But it doesn't stop there. Who is Elijah in the face of opposition? He is a servant. And intrinsic to the meaning, a servant doesn't stand alone. He's not just his own island, but a servant is dependent and subject to his master. And what does Elijah do? I have done all these things at your word. He acted in simple obedience and courage. C.S. Lewis writes, "Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point. A virtue that yields in the face of opposition becomes purely conditional. In the face of opposition, our identity and our understanding of God is tested. But when it's tested, will we find it to be conditional? Will the jersey come off when the circumstances are right? Now Elijah, as a servant, has said, I have done all you asked me, and now it's your turn. Answer me. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned and consumed the burnt offering, the wood and the stones and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. I think it's pretty clear here that's what's done, Elijah could not possibly have done on his own. But I think on occasion, we can act like the prophets of Baal, running around frantically, thinking that everything is done on our own power. But that is clearly not the case. Elijah remains true to God. He takes 12 stones to build this altar and offers a simple prayer. And I think there are 3 things that we can learn about Elijah in the face of opposition. Remaining true to God, that no matter where he's at, the jersey stays on. 2, simple obedience. He's doing exactly and only what God has told him to do, taking these stones to build an altar and building a trench around it. And then thirdly, he offers and goes to God with a simple prayer. God answers that powerfully with fire. And then the people respond by falling to their knees and recognizing the Lord is God. Now, I've never witnessed fire come down from heaven before, but I have seen God answering my prayers powerfully when I am in obedience, and as a result, I see people turn back to him. So at the end of my sophomore year, all these stories are my sophomore year, I went on a missions trip to China in 2005. And for those of you who have never gone on one yet, I encourage you, take a short-term mission trip. I promise it will rock your world and grow your faith in ways that you cannot even imagine. And I'm not an expert in China. I know that there's probably some international students here, but this is what they told us, and that's all I have to go off of. But at this time, China had a government that was very controlling of religious activity. So much so that all the churches had to be registered, and it was strictly forbidden for any foreigners to talk about the gospel. Even our team, when we were praying for our meals, we had to pray with our eyes open, which was super awkward, and we had to talk about mission agencies in code, like Big O or something like that. And at times it felt really cool, like we were secret agents or something like that. And so we came to Xi'an, China, hoping to build some great relations with the Chinese students there, teaching them English. And then, through one of the conversations with my Chinese buddy, his name was Hanson. Yeah, Hanson. He called himself handsome, and I think he thought that was the best word for that. He tells me that his aunt has a Bible. I tell my director this, and he encourages me to invite Hanson to a Bible study. And at this point, things aren't feeling super secret agent anymore. I'm like, are you serious? It's like, can we go to jail or something? Or will they deport us? I have no idea what's going to happen if I start telling people about Jesus. And I didn't want to be the one who outed our team that it's like, oh yeah, we're teaching English, but really telling people about Jesus. And then there's just a lot of personal insecurity going on here. It's like, I couldn't even stand up in my floor meeting, and now I have to do it in a country where the government is persecuting Christians? I had no idea what I was going to say, what was going to happen next, or what our out was. But then I think God was nudging me when we had an 8-hour weekend trip. I got this nudge to ask him. And then I was like, God, not now. Or wait, there's this never-ending line of trees. God, when these trees end, maybe I'll do it. And the trees end. And I'm like, oh, God, maybe once these trees start up again, I can't see when they're going to start up, I'll ask them. And the trees start up again. And at this point, I'm like, okay, God, I think you gave me 2 things, so let's go with this. And so I'm like, hey, Hanson, you know that book you told me that your aunt had, the Bible? Do you want to study it with me? And he turns to me and he's like, oh yes, I'd love to. I had no idea that he wanted to study the Bible that much. And even without me doing anything, the Bible study, the news of it spread like wildfire. Of our 16 students, 9 of them had came to that first meeting just because they wanted to understand who God was. And as we engage with Scripture, with the students in spiritual conversations, we found out that in China, where the religion was so heavily controlled, this is what their belief was. I need to believe in myself. I'm the only one that can do this for me. And then we told them, no, you don't need to believe in yourself. Sometimes I believe in myself and I fail. But you can put your belief in Jesus. And I promise you, he'll come through. And from that time, there's one Christian whose faith was wavering. But once he met us, it got reignited. There's another person who we found out was a member of the Communist Party, and we were actually scared that she was a spy the whole time. When she was like, oh, what's going on? We're like, nothing! Nothing is going on here! But it turns out she was more hungry than any of them to find out who Jesus was. And after we left, she became a Christian. And there was one other girl who had so much hatred and animosity towards her father because she had left her and her mother at a very early age for a younger woman. But when we showed her Jesus and his forgiveness and compassion, she was able to take a step and try to reconcile with her dad. It took one simple act of boldness and obedience to God in order to make him known and to see people turn back to him. And God answered those prayers powerfully. Elijah offered a simple prayer and a simple act of obedience and courage, that God would be made known, that people would be turned back, and God answered powerfully. And even though it's simple, that doesn't mean that it's easy. Elijah takes these risks. He makes decisions where God has to show up. He stakes it all on fire coming down from heaven. He pours water on this altar to make sure it's like, only God can be the answer to this. He shows a life where God has to show up. While the rest of the 100 prophets of God are safely hidden in their caves, Elijah is risking his life, showing up, keeping on the jersey, when the only option is for God to show up. And I think there's always that choice. Living in the caves or living out in the open. The safety and hiddenness versus the risk, courage, and obedience that's necessary. And this is not about testing God, trying to like, oh yeah, let's see if some fire is going to come up. But it's about making God known and seeing people turn to him. TCF, do we believe that staying true to God, going to him in prayer, and going out in simple courage and obedience, that God will respond powerfully, that he would be made known, and that people would turn to him? I'm going to give us a time to respond tonight. Now, for those of you who are checking out Jesus and you're like, I don't have a jersey on. Sorry, bro. Maybe you feel more like the people of Israel in this story. When the line is drawn in the sand and it's like, choose Jesus, choose God, choose something else. They're like, I have no idea. There's one thing I think we can learn from the people of Israel in the story. They gave God a chance. They were looking for an answer, and God gave them one. So here's my challenge to you, to give God a chance. There are many options out there for you. As Nate and Nolan and Ivan were talking about, there's FallCon. And I'm not just saying this because it's going to be a great time, because it is, but it's a good time to just create some space and allow God to work. Get away from schoolwork, spend it with God, spend it in community. Or consider, like John Carlos said, a God investigation group, a gig. A weekly opportunity to look at the Bible and make a decision for yourself. Who do you think Jesus is? And lastly, ask God to show up. Give God a chance and just pray for a week that give you a sign. Even today, God still wants to show that he is real. sophomore year again, there's this guy on my floor named Ben. And through the community, he loved hanging out with us. He loved learning about Jesus, but he had no idea whether or not he was ready to make a decision. And then at the very end of the year, we had our summer conference. And so Ben took a chance, and he was like, okay, God, I pray that you would fulfill all the financial need that I have to go to summer conference, and I want to see you show up. So he prayed for this, I prayed for this, and then little by little, money was found. Check his pocket, $20 bill. So I was like, oh, Ben, I owe you money, more money. And somehow it got up to $300 so that he can go to summer conference. So I challenge you, take a week and give God a chance. And then for others in this room, you may have resonated with more of the lessons of Elijah. Are we, when we leave these doors, still going to remain true to God? Is the jersey still going to stay on, or does it come right off when we're outside? We don't want to be like the other 100 who are living safely hidden in caves. Well, are we willing to go outside where we feel the pressure and opposition? It's like, this stays on. I'm staying true to who I am. Also, in this passage, Elijah takes 12 stones to build an altar. And these 12 stones represent the 12 tribes of Israel, a picture of the people of God. And he does this for two reasons: that God would be made known, and that people would turn back. And for you, I'm asking you, if you want to respond, let's take a stone and build an altar. Along the sides, there are little buckets full of stones. And this could be in response to, yes, I know that area where I feel the pressure coming on, and everything that is true about God just comes off. Or it could be, I want to respond in prayer and boldness, to see God made known, and see people turn back to him. Whether that means having a spiritual conversation with a roommate or a family member, whether it means coming out with us for our campaign to engage the campus on identity and how does God fit in with that next week. And I know it can be a bit scary, and you could also always wonder, it's like, what will people be thinking? But my question to you is, who will you be in the face of opposition? For Elijah, he was the Lord's servant, doing simply what he commanded, nothing more, and certainly nothing less. So as I invite the worship team up right now, take some time and just think. It's like, is this a step that I want to take towards God? Do I want to make sure that I stay true to him and this jersey stays on? Do I want to turn to him in obedience and prayer and see that he is made known? If so, just come down the aisle, put a stone down to respond. Let me pray for us. Dear God, I thank you for your word and just what it shows us in terms of the truth of who we can be in the midst of opposition. And God, I pray, Lord, that you would be stirring in our hearts a passion for your name, God. I pray, Lord, that we say, have your way with us, that we are your servants, you are our master. So God, I ask that you would speak to us in this time of reflection now.